Good to Great: Why Some Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't, by author Jim Collins. The Good to Great research team spent just over 10 years researching publicly traded companies which have went from being good companies, defined as trailing around the market average, to great companies, defined as making a return at least 3 times that of the market average over 15 years. The research team examined a total of 1,435 good companies. Of that 1,435, only 11 companies made the transition from good to great. Along with these 11 companies, Collins also identified a comparison company unique for each individual company that was in the same position to make the transition from good to great, but did not. Within the book, Jim Collins and his research team give you a framework that is prevalent in all the companies that made the transition from good to great. The framework is as follows. This is the good to great flywheel of success, and contained within it is a guideline of principles and attributes present in all the companies that went from good to great. Those attributes are disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. Let's dive into each of these and find the core concepts that enabled the 11 companies to make the leap from good to great. The first concept is that of the level 5 leader. Most leaders progress through the first 3 levels of leadership quite easily. Number 1, they begin as a highly skilled, capable worker. Then they become a contributing team member. After that, they progress to being a well-organized, competent team manager. Much fewer leaders progress past level 3. Leaders who progress to level 4 are the visionaries with a message that people can get behind. These leaders are generally very charismatic, extremely successful, but almost no leaders make it to the next level, which is the level 5 leader. Level 5 leaders are those with extreme resolve to do what is best for the company, regardless of the effect it has on themselves. Think Steve Jobs or Abraham Lincoln. Level 5 leaders are not concerned with self-recognition. They are also extremely humble and often quite introverted, though this is not an essential trait. When Collins interviewed the good to great leaders and asked them about how they did it and what made them special and allowed them to make the leap, it was a theme that they would say things like, "We were blessed with a great team," or "We were lucky. The environment was just right for us." They would never attribute the success of the company to only themselves, but rather to the team. This humility does not mean that they are timid. These CEOs have been described as having a stoic determination to do whatever is best for the company. One CEO of Kimberly-Clark actually sold the paper mills that had been the core business of the company to pursue their ambitions of breaking into the consumer market with their Kleenex brand. One director called this the gutsiest decision he'd ever seen a CEO make. Next, they focused first on who, then on what. Jim Collins attributes a company to a bus, and the people on the bus as the employees of the company. Level 5 leaders focused first on who was in the bus, then on the direction that the bus was to go. This means that they focused on getting the right people into the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people into the right seats. Wells Fargo, which was one of the 11 companies that made the transition, asked themselves a set of questions for every employee at the end of their probation period. They asked themselves, would we rehire this person again? Or if they were to leave to pursue a great opportunity, would they be secretly relieved? Based on the answer to these questions, they would decide whether or not to keep that person. By focusing first on who, along with the upcoming concepts in this book, Wells Fargo was able to create one of the most profitable banks in America. Furthermore, every executive that was working at Wells Fargo during their transition years ended up becoming a CEO of another company years later. Something else common in the good to great companies was that they focused on who was sitting where on the bus. The good to great companies always put their top performing staff in charge of pursuing new opportunities, contrary to the comparison companies who put their best employees on their biggest problems. The good to great companies realize that if you only focus on fixing problems, you will only perpetuate your mediocrity. Disciplined thought. The next concept that the good to great companies embraced was discipline, and the ability to confront the brutal facts. To illustrate this point, author Jim Collins tells a story of naval officer James Stockdale. Stockdale was a Vietnam prisoner of war. During this period, Commander Stockdale and his prison mates were repeatedly tortured, and had no reason to believe that they would make it out alive. But Stockdale remained faithful that he would not only make it out, but make it out and use this experience to prevail in the end. Stockdale never broke, and when asked to explain who did break, his answer was the optimists. This is the paradox that has come to be known as the Stockdale paradox. His prison mates would always tell stories of how they would get out of prison by Easter or by Christmas and see their families. This was not faith, this was blind optimism without facing the facts. And the facts were that they were not going to get out by Christmas. This led them to break when Christmas came. Stockdale, on the other hand, never thought he'd get out by Christmas, but never lost faith that he would eventually get out and prosper after. He confronted his reality, but never lost faith in his vision, and this has been the same for the good to great companies. When CEO David Maxwell joined Fannie Mae, the company was in $56 billion worth of debt from bad mortgages and losing an average of $1 million per day. Maxwell, being a level 5 leader, confronted that fact, but never lost faith that they could make it out and prosper. They confronted the fact that they were dying and dealt with it as such, never losing faith that they would eventually become profitable again. So with Maxwell's leadership, they developed a new system of assessing risk for mortgages and went from losing $1 million a day to making $4 million a day. By confronting the brutal facts and embodying the good to great concepts, Fannie Mae went from the laughingstock of Wall Street to one of the greats. The good to great companies never shied away from the facts, but never lost faith in themselves, just like Stockdale. Next is the hedgehog concept. If you could be a fox or a hedgehog, which would you pick? Most would say a fox, as they are sleek, beautiful, and cunning, unlike a hedgehog, who is spiky and cumbersome. But what does this have to do with organizational success? When a fox chases a hedgehog, it will use many cunning tactics to capture the hedgehog, trying something new every day. But no matter what the fox tries, the hedgehog will always roll into a scary ball of spikes and render the fox's attempts useless. As the old Greek parable goes, the fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. The good to great companies developed a mentality similar to that of the hedgehog. They found one big thing that they could do better than anyone else, and from that produced excellence, just like the hedgehog. The comparison companies, on the other hand, did the contrary, and would change their models and strategies at random to fetch a quick profit, and end up just like the fox, with wasted energy and no meal at the end of it. The good to great companies found their hedgehog concept by looking to the intersecting points of the following 3 circles. The first circle is to define whether they are passionate about their business or if they're just in it for the money. The good to great companies realized that if they were passionate about their business, they would produce better results than other companies who were just doing it for the money. Steve Jobs put it best: the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Next, they find out if they can be the best at this business. This needs to come from an understanding that they can be the best, not just a hope or bravado of being the best. Gillette knew that they could be the best at building a premier global brand of men's daily necessities. Gillette saw that it had an unusual combination of very different skills. Number 1, the ability to manufacture low-cost, high-tolerance blades, and the ability to build a global consumer brand that could be as recognizable as Coca-Cola or Nike. Lastly, they uncovered their economic engine. They looked at what defining factor would allow them to rev their economic engine to its highest RPM versus the competition. For Walgreens, this was to shift the focus of the standard profit per store model used in most pharmacies to profit per customer. This brings us to the last part of the framework: disciplined action. The good to great companies were able to cultivate a culture of discipline. This was done through getting the right people on the bus, as described earlier. Furthermore, Collins found in studying the companies that transitioned from good to great that the CEOs of these companies spent almost no effort in trying to motivate employees, whereas the comparison companies did so to an order of magnitude more than the good to great companies. This is because when your bus is filled with the right people, they are self-motivated and motivated by their environment. This is a big contributing factor to the flywheel effect. Next is technology accelerators. The good to great companies think differently about technology and the effect it has on change versus the mediocre companies. They avoid tech fads like we saw in the 90s internet bubble, but don't avoid new technology entirely. Instead, they use it as an accelerator to their current momentum and pioneer the application of carefully selected technologies that align with their hedgehog concept. Unlike the comparison companies who try to use technology to create momentum, Walgreens, for example, was a pioneer in online order and pickup for medication. This fit perfectly in line with their hedgehog concept of convenience, and was unheard of in the late 90s and early 2000s. And that's Good to Great by author Jim Collins. Despite the name, this book is great for businesses that are just starting out as well. It will definitely go into the top 10 books that I've read. Hey guys, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as it really does help us grow. Also, post a comment below if you'd like me to review a specific book next video. Till next time, goodbye.